Welcome, everyone, to today's NextGen Research Forum. A very exciting program. We're really excited to see so many of you here. My name is Jane Somerton. I am VREF Scientific Advisor, and I'm standing in for our director, Henrik Normark, who had to leave unexpectedly to take care of something with a deadline. So I'm standing in for him, but he sends his best and regrets that he could not be part of things today. I'd just like to mention that we are especially pleased about this research forum today because it marks the first concrete activity which is organized by our new VREF Next Generation team. We have an independent team of 6 facilitators, 2 from each of our programs. Some of them are here today, as you will see. Robert Mbunda, Ashlyn Basil, Nisha Nair, Maria Nieto Combracio, Shahan Ahmed, and Obed War. So if you don't know about our program for NextGen Scholars, we'd urge you to contact one of these people. I'm sure you're probably familiar with one of them, and get linked in, literally, but also connect, find out about all the opportunities and activities that we have planned. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Karen Henriksson, who is VREF's communications officer and is in charge of the logistics today, and she's the one to address all your problems with connections and things like that. So I think we're ready to go. Thank you very much, everyone, in advance for today's activities. And now over to Maria Jose and Nisha.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Karen, for setting up all of the technological issues here, and everyone for being here, presenters, discussants, and everyone that is joining. This is our first NextGen Forum for Nisha and I as facilitators of the walking program, and we're truly excited that we received so many applications to be presenters and discussants. And as Jane mentioned before, it's a wide range of geographies that we'll be looking at today, all brought together by the subject of vulnerable identities and how this intersects with walking conditions. So we would like the presenters to introduce themselves before they do their presentations, but I'll give the floor to Nisha as well to give you a welcome to our session.
Hello, everyone. So like Maria said, we are really excited today to moderate this session, and also going through the range of papers that were submitted for the presentations. We think that it's going to be a very promising discussion today. As all of you know, largely we will be looking at questions like how do spatial conflicts impact walking for different marginalized groups? What interventions can improve walking conditions for the vulnerable population? And how can inclusive planning and policy address mobility inequalities today? I would request Maria to open the session today on that note.
Thank you, Nisha. I think our older next generation facilitator, Robert and Pascaline, might have some announcements. So I'll pass it over to you, Robert and Pascaline, if you want to have some news and bring all of the people that are joining into this beautiful community that is the NextGen Scholars.
Thank you so much, Maria and Nisha. It's indeed a beautiful community, as you can see, joining from all parts of the world, and we are so excited. This is our very first forum, like Jen has already mentioned, and I know she also said that some of us it's a new generation of facilitators, but some of us are old, and I'm so happy with Robert. Today, we are stepping behind a little bit so that we can have our powerful ladies, Maria and Nisha, take over the facilitation, the moderation today. But before I hand over to Robert, who is going to come last, I'd also like to request our 2 other colleagues to also quickly say hello so that we can get known by the community that we are supporting and that we are coordinating. And again, another big thank you to all of us. We can never do this alone. We need each one of you. And by the response that came through, we already have enough for the rest of the year. So thank you so much to all of us. Allow me to call upon our other colleagues, Obed and am I seeing Shahan here, to also say a quick hello. And then now we hand over to Robert, who is going to officially tell us something briefly about why we are all here and why we are looking so beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pascaline. I think we're quite happy to be here, and I think you emphasized it quite well that it's nice to step back a bit and give Maria and Nisha a chance to also moderate as well as share within the working program in terms of what's happening and what's the knowledge and experience from that particular program. The most important thing here, I think, to emphasize and to piggyback off what Jane has said, is that this is a new format for the VREF NextGens, where we combine all the NextGens from the different VREF programs. So we have quite a dynamic, quite an experienced team from what I've seen and from the experiences we've had from talking with each other. And I think they've all been introduced. So if you have any questions, any ideas on how we can make the program more exciting, more engaging as well, you can reach out to any one of us. Perhaps before I hand back over to our facilitators for the day, I just want to quickly highlight some of the opportunities for the NextGens. We have the SLOCAT VREF Young Leaders in Sustainable Transport Program. So you can apply for that, and the due date is the 4th of April. So make sure to look out for that. If you aren't able to find the link, you can reach out to any one of us and we'll be able to share the link with you. We also have the Lee Shipper Memorial Scholarship, which is the deadline is on the 15th of April. So also look out for that, as well as study visit grants, which are granted by VREF on a need-to-need basis. So those are some of the opportunities available within the NextGen program. And if you have any questions on those, you can reach out to any one of us. Maria, Nisha, back to you.
Robert, just before you hand over, can we have Shahan say hello? And Obed, please. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Shahan. I'm one of the facilitators for the ISM project, the Informal and Shared Mobility project. I'm excited to have you all here and for a lot of these forums going through. Ubed?
Hi everyone, my name is Obed Bore, one of the facilitators, and I'm so glad to be part of this team, growing community. And yeah, we will keep in touch, and welcome to the session for those who are here for the first time. Looking forward to a very wonderful interaction with all of us. Back to you, Pascaline or Nisha.
Thank you so much, colleagues. You did not mention which countries you are coming from, you are connecting from. I hope you can tell the rest of the community in the chat. And again, a call to all of us. Please tell us who you are, where you are connecting from, and anything that you like about what we are doing. But over to you, to the powerful ladies, for the afternoon or morning, depending on where you are connecting from. We are so excited to have this very first forum, and we are a big team now than we were before. So it means power going forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
So on that note, I would open our presentations and discussions today, and I would like to invite Amina from the University of Malta. Amina, you have 15 minutes for the presentation, following which Rafael will, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Rafael will take over as the discussant, and Rafael, you will have 5 minutes. So whenever, so we'll be keeping time, and we will let you know when you're closer to 15 minutes and 5 minutes. Over to you, Amina. I think, Amina, you should begin with a little introduction about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
So the 15 minutes has started or not yet?
We'll start as soon as you finish presenting yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am very pleased to be here among you today in the VREF NextGen Research Forum. And so my name is Amina Smawi, and I am from Tunisia. I study at the University of Malta as a postgraduate student. I study an MSc in Sustainable Development. And I have a background in law, public law precisely, migration studies, and now I'm acquiring a background in sustainability, which I really find very enriching, especially when together, all of them together, like law, migration, and sustainability. And precisely now, I am working on migration and sustainable mobility. So I'm trying to see the travel behavior of migrants. For instance, now I'm doing a master's dissertation in Malta about migrants, commuters, and their travel behavior towards sustainable mobility in Malta. Thank you.
All right, shall your 15 minutes begin?
Okay. Hello, everyone. So today, within my research dissertation, the research is about understanding travel behavior and attitudes towards sustainable mobility amongst migrant commuters in Malta. We are going to start with the table of contents. Next slide, please. So for the table of contents, we have the introduction, literature review, methodology, preliminary findings, and last but not least, we are going to see the conclusion. Next slide, please. Okay, so Malta is a car-dependent island state. Like, for example, 84% of private trips are made by car. And apart from this, it is a small archipelago, 316 kilometers square, with one of the highest densities populated in the EU. Like, for example, you can find in 1 kilometer square about 1,700 people. And apart from this, next slide, please. And apart from this, Malta is witnessing an increase in international migration. Like, for example, the migrants count from 2011 to 2021 increased fivefold. And when there is like an unsustainable travel behavior within a society, this can alone create challenges. However, when these challenges when there is like a variation in social norms, social attitudes, and cultural influences, these may further exacerbate these challenges and create significant ones. And all of these variations are brought by international migrants within the host society. And existing research on urban mobility here in Malta has not yet studied migration and mobility together. So there is a gap missing in the Maltese context when it comes to urban mobility. And therefore, this study, not only that it will fill the gap, but also it will provide further foundation for future studies about migration and mobility here in Malta. Next slide, please. So this is the research gap that I was talking about. And the next slide, please. Okay. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay. And in order to explore this phenomena, the research questions are three and are as follow. The first one is, what is the primary mode of transport used by international migrant commuters aged between 25 and 44 years old residing in Malta, and what factors shape their mobility, their mode choices? The second one, what are the travel behavior patterns of international migrant commuters aged 25 to 44 years old in Malta? And last but not least, to what degree do international migrant commuters in Malta aged between 25 and 44 years old demonstrate awareness of sustainable transportation options? Next slide, please. Okay. in order to answer these research questions, I chose to conduct a mixed methods approach. I chose to start with the qualitative phase in order to feed into the quantitative one. So the qualitative phase is composed of semi-structured interviews that would be asked to 12 migrants residing in Malta, 12 working migrants residing in Malta, and also to 12 Maltese as a control group. So we can later on compare between the insights. And also, after the interviews, participants will receive travel diaries in which they will be able to report like a typical week and weekend day, maybe as well their viewpoint about the transport in general in Malta, as well incidents like incidents of lateness, satisfaction levels. And when it comes to the quantitative phase, it is mainly composed of a questionnaire. So I would like to emphasize upon the fact that I chose to start with interviews. So first I can get familiarized with the migrants' background here in Malta and also the local context. So this will allow me to have feedback that I will be using later on to build on the questionnaire questions. So I can have a questionnaire related to the local context. Next slide, please. Okay, I would like to mention here that this presentation will be limited to the level of analyzing the primary findings of the analysis that I have so far conducted with migrants. So far, I have conducted 7 interviews with 7 migrants. I can mention their countries. They come from Colombia, Albania, China, and also one Italian who have lived in Ireland. And in order to analyze these interviews, I chose the reflexive thematic analysis as a qualitative approach. Why I chose it? Because what I like about the most is the fact that it allows the researchers reflexivity and flexibility in theme development. And thanks to this approach, 6 themes were emerged. Next slide, please. Okay, so 6 themes emerged. For instance, migrant background and pre-Malta context, the first theme. It is really important as a theme because when we ask migrants from where they came from, and they say, I came from my home country, for instance, not like a previous country of residence other than Malta. Here in this case, we need to analyze the transport landscape and the culture within the country of residence previous than the one of previous than Malta. However, when a migrant has arrived from a country of origin or their home country, we need to emphasize on the culture within their home country. Also, the second theme is about residential and work locations. The third one is transport modes and accessibility. And the fourth is travel behavior and daily mobility. And the fifth, environmental awareness and perceptions of Malta's transport landscape. And last but not least, comparative perspective, Malta vs country of origin or previous residence. Next slide, please. So we can start with the first theme. For instance, here we have codes like country of origin and year of arrival. Some migrants has just arrived, so they are recent arrival, and some of them have been on the island, for instance, for 5 years. Why this is important? Because it is important to see whether at the end of the day they try to keep their sustainable behavior if they came from a sustainable travel behavior environment, or they will assimilate to the Maltese car dominant culture. And then we have codes as place of residence before Malta, transport infrastructure in the home country or country of residence, and the mobility patterns before migration. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the second theme is about residential and work locations. So migrants navigate Malta's urban landscape balancing practical considerations with personal preferences and social integration. I can here take the example of a Colombian migrant who expressed, "My location in Pietà is the big connection for all buses, for all locations." An Italian migrant has said, "Because when I arrived in Malta, I had a few friends living here and I got familiar here." So this migrant based his residential location according to social network and family and friends. And when it comes to the third theme, it is about transport modes and accessibility. So we can see, next slide, please. We can see how the driver license in Malta and the car ownership and usage play a key role. And as well, the public transport perception as well play a very important key role. Like, for example, the role of branding in public transport perception, the power and naming of mobility narratives, convenience and accessibility, cost effectiveness and practicality, overcrowding and discomfort, unpredictability and efficiency, seasonal preferences and alternative solutions. Like, for instance, one migrant has said, in summer, I don't think that a Talinia bus is possible. And it is fair enough because in summer in Malta represents the peak period of tourism. Like, for instance, in the summer of 2024, Malta got 3.6 million tourists. Therefore, the bus is unbearable and it is constantly packed. Another migrant said, "The bus system here is very interesting. There are a lot of buses." Another one said, "Sometimes the smell is not good inside. Sometimes it is full, too many people, and there is no space." And I would like also to mention the fact that since the bus is free for migrants residing in Malta, and the card with which they register in the bus, since it is called Talinia, they happily refer to the bus as a Talinia bus. Next slide, please. Okay, here when it comes to, we still with the third theme, we have telework and its impact on mobility. I really enjoyed the quote from one migrant who suggested that actually remote work may reduce the traffic, and it is one of many solutions. The next slide, please. Okay, and now with the fourth theme, so we have travel behavior and daily mobility, more choice and commuting preferences. One migrant has said, "Most of the time I will take the bus. First of all, it is free. Secondly, it is convenient. And third, the distance is not that long, so it won't consume too much of my time." Another one has said, "It is within if it is within the same neighborhood, I use the scooter. However, for far distances, I use the car." Another one said, "It depends. I can walk inside San Juan, which is a neighborhood, but I cannot walk to Valletta from San Juan." Therefore, like migrants here, they are trying to accommodate their travel on the distance, need, and accessibility. Okay, next slide, please. And now we have perceptions of sustainable mobility with regard to the fifth theme, which is environmental awareness and perceptions of Malta's transport landscape. So here there is like many controversy. Some migrants are really sustainable and they do, let's say, they do like they are really aware, and others they just try to focus on their personal preferences. So one migrant from China has said, "I decided to sell my car, and then I think I can only do my part to reduce the number of cars on the road is to either drive less or just not to drive. I now think to consider a balance between myself and then the environment." Another one has said, "When I will have a car, I will not need public transport because also for my family, it is very easy for us. We can use the car to go to the beach or to my job." And also, I would like to put the emphasis upon the fact that it is very important as well to consider that there is sort of economic pressures which limit the environmental action. One migrant has expressed, "People barely have a mind to think about how to care about the environment, because the living cost is higher and higher, especially in Malta.
Hi,
And
Amina. Sorry to interrupt. You have 3 more minutes.
3
3 more minutes.
3 minutes.
3 more minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. And another quote that I really appreciate is about the emotional attachment to traditional engines. It looks very simple, but it is very complicated because it may refrain us from using sustainable transport options. Like one migrant has said, you want to hear the engine of the motorcycle. You don't feel the same in a quiet motorcycle. It is different. Here they were referring to the electric motorcycle. Okay, migrants, when it comes to their let's say the transport landscape from their own eyes, they also noticed that the car dependency as a cultural norm. One said, I noticed that there is a very strong car culture in Malta. It seems like regardless of age, gender, or religious orientation, everyone wants to drive and everyone owns a car, and many people own more than one car. Another one said, Malta is reaching a certain limit where people get frustrated and also feel stressed when it comes to commuting from one place to another with the heavy traffic on the roads every day. Okay, and now next slide, please. Okay, and now last but not least, we are going to see the last theme, which is the comparative perspective. So when it comes to the codes, there is car dependency with sustainable policies. Since some migrants, they were aware of sustainability thanks to the policies implemented whether in their home country or the previous country of residence. There is also the perception of transport culture and driver behavior. A Colombian migrant, for instance, noted that Malta's transport is cleaner and safer compared to Bogota and Colombia. However, an Italian migrant criticized Malta's driving culture, stating that it lacks the discipline and efficiency found in Ireland, where drivers are better educated and public transport have dedicated lanes. Please, next slide. Okay, and here we have public transport, although free but lacking infrastructure, and also the issue of traffic congestion and infrastructure challenges. Next slide, please. And now to conclude, the main conclusion are the fact that efficient public transport directly reduces the car dependence. While efficient public transport encourages walking and cycling, thus even unsustainable mobility, even unreliable mobility environments can encourage sustainable habits through reducing the car reliance. However, reducing the car reliance remains uncertain. And migrants in Malta are smart commuters. They navigate the transport landscape with adaptability, relying on a mix of transport like public transport, walking, cycling, and scooters rather than dependent solely on cars, unlike many Maltese who prioritize private car ownership. Migrants demonstrate flexibility, adjusting their mobility choices based on distance, necessity, and accessibility. Migrant commuters thus demonstrate smarter and more sustainable behavior than the one of Maltese. Last but not least, migrants are more likely to form their viewpoints by comparing the host country with their previous country of residence or home country. Therefore, even the notion of safety remains open to interpretation as it depends on each migrant's cultural and social background. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be very glad to receive all of your questions and feedback. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Amina. It was a very interesting presentation. I'll give the floor to Rafael to comment. Rafael, you have 5 minutes to do your comments, and then go on.
Thank you, Maria. I'm Rafael Rosales. I'm a researcher at Norse and I have a PhD in human geography. So that is my brief introduction to myself. Hi, Amina. Thank you for your presentation. It was really nice as a social scientist who has used thematic analysis and interviews to see how they're used in different topics, and I really appreciated your attempts to combine the migration perspectives and this research on mobility. I now understand your presentation a little better than when I first received it. Now that I know that it is your master's thesis, I see that there's a lot of data, and I originally thought it was going to be 2 articles, but it makes sense that it's one large submission. But taking that into account, I see that you have started your data analysis. I understand that you've only carried out 7 of your 12 interviews with the Maltese migrants. And well, my first question is if you've had any contact or any insights into the travel behavior and travel or the cultural norms amongst Maltese residents. And even to take it a step further, I think one thing that should be defined early on in your work is how you're going to define who is the migrant population and who is the rest. I think it might be important to signal that you are going to differentiate, for example, between first generation migrants, and then you could have people amongst your Maltese population who are second generation migrants, but they've adapted to the local culture, or people who are uh, Maltese citizens could also be first generation migrants who have been part of the Eurobarometer, for example. So that's one comment that I would say should be clarified early on, and which should be differentiated before you carry out your second stage of research. But in terms of what you have, I think you have a lot of data. Like I said, I thought it was going to be part of something of several papers, but I think this is something that is very much doable in a master's thesis. I appreciate the amount of codes and themes that you've gathered, and I think it might help to. I see some similarities between some of the codes, so I think it might help if you try to see the patterns between them and create more generic themes that might help you reorganize these codes. Because at least one thing that I did see is that on theme 3, your comments on flexibility, preferences, and time saving, that was quite similar to or sorry, I'm confusing. That was on theme 3, the topics of convenience, accessibility, and effectiveness were slightly similar to the cost convenience that you mentioned under theme 4, for example. So I would I appreciate the messiness that can take place through several rounds of revision of interview data, but that's what makes it all the more richer. And I do hope that it feeds into your survey questions. But yeah, it always helps to simplify your codes. Um, and I think one thing that would really strengthen the background for your dissertation is that you give you give some more concrete numbers on the Maltese context. I would be really interested to know what percentage of the Maltese population is of first generation immigrant background. It seems like a strong or a big increase, that it's a 5-fold increase in a short period of time, but the numbers might help make a stronger case. And yeah, another thing would be to explain early on what you mean by migrant commuters, just because my first impression when I heard that uh, concept was that it was people who were moving in and out of Malta or even within Malta, and it might help to explain that as early as possible. And but I think your research gap is quite interesting, and your 3 research questions are quite concrete. So also, when you're considering your codes and your data analysis, just think back to your 3 research questions, because I think they're quite clear. It's transport behavior, social norms, or well, the primary mode of transport, the travel behavior patterns, and then the awareness. And there you have behavior, norms, and well, just perceptions of what sustainable transport entails. And that might help you filter your codes as you analyze your data. I, at this point, have no idea how much time I have left, but I well, maybe if you had any questions for myself, so I can use that last time I have to answer your questions.
Okay.
We have like a minute left.
And let's use that minute quickly.
Okay. So I would like to say that when it comes to migration and the definition of a migrant here in Malta and Maltese, the way I did it is I first saw like the local context and I tried to see how they are introducing here migrants. And migrants here in Malta are those people who are at least intended to stay here for 12 months, or they have like stayed here at least for one period of one year. So
So
either the
just
intention
of
or the
course
length
that
of stay.
don't worry about defining that with us now, but just make sure that you do so in your dissertation.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I was just gonna make sure that we don't lose any time so that we can
Okay. Thank you.
discuss
Thank
now.
you. Actually, all
And
the feedback is very, very insightful, and I take every feedback into account.
but I think it's gonna be a really interesting thesis. So just keep working with your codes, and I hope that it helps with your comparison. I think the comparison is going to be really interesting between the two groups, and then the use of travel diaries will give you a lot more data. So just try to simplify as much as you can, because otherwise you're going to have endless amount of codes and could spend way too much time analyzing that. So with that, I think our time is up.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Amina and Rafael, for your insightful comments. I know also in the background you had been sharing some suggestions, and that's truly what this forum is about, is for us to get all of the input from colleagues and peers in the process of research that is never easy, right? With this, we can have the following presenter. So Celeste, if you wanna share with us a brief introduction and then 15 minutes of your presentation, please.
All right, hello to you all. I'm Celeste Medina. I'm from Peru. I'm 23 years old. So the research, well, wait, I'll start sharing my screen. So this research is part of my work for my bachelor degree. In Peru, we have two key stages so we can finish our undergrad studies. So first we get the bachelor degree, and now I'm on my way to get my licentiate degree. And that's how things work here. So as of now, I'm going to present to you all this study that I did so I can earn my bachelor's degree in sociology. And it is titled, as you see, Mobility of Care in Peripheral and Self-Urbanized Popular Neighborhoods in Lima, Peru. So with that said, I'll start. So to begin, this follows the structure of my thesis as outlined here. And in Peru, since the liberalization of transport around the 1980s, urban planning has largely favored automobiles, eroding the city's walkability. So this exacerbated socio-spatial inequalities as marginalized communities in Lima's peripheries and faced limited access to urban services due to geographic and economic barriers, which further entrenched material deprivation. And as we all know, care work is is fundamental to sustaining cities and societies. Yet these spatial inequalities severely disrupt its provision. Caraballo is a district in Lima from the northern part of it, and it is also part of the periphery of the city. And as you can see, it is also composed of 38 low-income households. So to tackle this problem, my research examines the intersection of care and mobility within context of material disadvantage, specifically talking about peripheral areas And so for this research, I'm specifically asking how women in popular neighborhoods of Lima shape their mobility of care in terms of, wait, I can see because, okay, in terms of motives, experiences, challenges, and strategies in the context of self-built popular neighborhoods in steep slope areas. So for the general objective, my main goal is to describe the characteristics according to these dimensions I mentioned before. And for that, and well, to achieve that, my literature review identified three central themes. First of all, is the difference between mobility and transportation. This is crucial for investigation because mobility is defined as a social practice that reveals unequal urban experiences, distinct from mere infrastructure more related to transport. Linked to this last idea, the second theme emphasizes that mobility is not gender neutral. Since women face disproportionate barriers due to structural gender disparities. And third, Sanchez de Madariaga coined the concept mobility of care from a critic related to surveys about mobility, well, mobility in the urban spaces. But from that definition, it progressed into more qualitative research. And this is what this research is also focusing on, because caregiving as a social practice impacts mobility, and caregiving and mobility are what structure the social life. So as maybe we all know and are familiar with, there's an unequal distribution of caregiving work, mostly given to women, which impacts on the accessibility barriers they face, particularly for those in poverty. So for the theoretical framework, we'll start with care. I identified in 5 key concepts, but for care, and this research defines it as a series of practices tied to social, emotional, and material well-being. But with spatialized, which is a concept coined by Hiron, which is a Chilean researcher, sorry. When care is specialized, it reveals how these practices interact with their environment. So the spatial dimension, this spatial dimension underscores the intimate relationship between bodies, movement, and urban space, revealed in the accessibility barriers they face. And also this could be overcome by the structure of opportunities that is composed by resources that they could manage. And interdependence is basically a condition of mobility in which there's a mutual influence because of a series of responsibilities, especially in the context of care work. So for the methodology of this research, I opted for a qualitative approach, combining semi-structured interviews and participant observation. My fieldwork started in March of 2024 and finished some months later. I'm using mobility as an approach so I can focus on the social practices that take place during movement. I also processed some georeference information, as you will see in some cartographies I attached to this presentation. So for the case study, I considered one of the main challenges of peripheral and self-urbanized popular neighborhoods, which is the limited scope of available urban infrastructure. Vehicular transit is impossible due to the lack of adequate infrastructure and the topography of the location, as you can see here. So when we're talking about different dimensions for the analysis, we can clearly see that the material disadvantages overlap with the lack of urban infrastructure, This is, as we saw here, the transit, the available urban infrastructure in terms of transport. And this, when we overlap this with socioeconomic status, urban vulnerability, and the inequalities the population here face are exacerbated. So for the area of this study, the residents obtain around 863 soles. I put some conversions here for my fellow presenters. But 863 soles is less than the minimum wage here in Peru, so it barely gets them by. This setting highlights the spatial disadvantages and how they intersect with socioeconomic vulnerability, particularly in steep slope zones. So to start with the results, we have to talk about the material disadvantages shown in the quality of their everyday mobility infrastructure, mainly the stairs and the dirt roads. So for the stairs, we can see that these are self-built, but also the quality is questionable as they didn't have any technical guidance for the construction. They are a response to the lack of infrastructure they have at hand to be connected to the rest of the city. And for the dirt roads, on the other hand, their unconsolidated condition intensify physical pain and physical strain, embedding inequality in bodily experience. So for this presentation and considering the material conditions of their everyday travel and the production of their conceived space arises from their daily mobility practices, how does care impact the spatial production of the city? I identified a typology of units of care for which space is perceived and produced. So to start, first off, care is often associated with a private sphere, but the lack of urban services in self-built neighborhoods forces women to extend care into public spaces. And for example, the lack of access to water makes them start fetching water from neighbors, or at least from neighbors that have this access to water. This redefines care as a mobile practice that transcends domestic boundaries, since some new responsibilities are attached to what we conceive as mobility of care. So, spatial production arises from this interaction between body and materiality. This can be seen when we're talking about neighborhood, since they start applying this strategy of getting used to it, but it is not a non-linear strategy. We often think that they accept their material conditions because they face them every day. However, it is a constant process. So because of this constant process, especially during their walks, they are constantly or daily exposed to their structural inequalities, and this exposition motivates them to be part of the production and enhancement of their material surroundings. So while construction is often gendered and viewed as masculine, self-built infrastructure emerges as a care practice. Because it means improving the conditions for care labor. This reflects how marginalized communities reclaim agency through material interventions. So this is a table that summarizes some of the accessibility barriers. As we can see, the physical barriers are the main component, but for this presentation, we have to take into consideration that these barriers are overlapping. So when they walk or navigate through the social space, they are facing not one, but then simultaneously. So the strategies, even though they need to be, or they are more specific than anything, they mainly have to be economic. They mainly have to have access to economic or financial support, because the lack of these infrastructural services, urban services, can be overcome by this access to capital. So when we're talking about the title of this presentation, the careful walk, what we are trying to say with it. Careful walk encapsulates how material conditions shape women's experiences during care work, while navigating steep hazardous stairs to reach health facilities or traversing fragmented paths to schools. The infrastructure itself exacerbates urban vulnerability. These barriers, originally constructed to mitigate exclusion, so for example, the stairs that allow them to be connected to the rest of the city, paradoxically deepen the inequality they face by forcing women and children into daily encounters with precarity. So when we're talking about care, we need to specialize it, because their vulnerability deepens during their movement.
Hey, Celeste. 2 more minutes. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay, it's okay. So in a nutshell, because I'm also finishing the presentation, physical impediments merge with temporal, financial, organizational, bodily, and emotional barriers, creating a compounding burden. So we often talk about walking as in terms of sustainability, right? But what happens when it is an obligation and not an intermodal option, especially in vulnerable contexts such as this? This reframes walking not as a sustainable choice, but as an enforced mobility option in contexts devoid of alternatives. So I also wanted to share a bit of investigation I'm part of, which is about domestic workers, more in a metropolitan scale. And are some quantitative data that we collected. And we found, or this revealed, that domestic workers mostly reside in peripheral areas with poor infrastructure, while their workplaces are in well-served zones. So the long journeys between these two spaces, their homes and their workplaces, materialize socioeconomic divides, reinforcing spatial injustice. And some final ideas. We must consider both a care and a gender perspective while urban planning. Care permeates the entire experience of the urban fabric, since it is a relational practice. Care work does not merely occur in vulnerable spaces, it produces them through daily bodily engagement. By centering care in urban discourse, we expose how infrastructure amplifies precarity in transformative action. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. That was very insightful. I think it connects very well with the question that I had for Amina in terms of what sustainability means and how does this intersect. But I'll leave the discussion. So if you can join us, and Mariam, with your comments, you have 5 minutes to comment on Celeste's presentation.
Thank you so much for providing this opportunity. My name is Mariam Jafari. I'm a PhD student at Monash University. And thank you so much, Celeste, for your presentation. It was great and with fabulous pictures, actually. In this section, I want to consider some novelty and interesting aspect of her research. The first one is that this research focused on care mobility. as a distinct category that is tied to caregiving task is innovative, and it highlights how mobility is shaped by gender care roles, which are often invisible in urban planning. The next one is that this research focuses on self-built neighborhoods in Peru, a context. Actually, it happens for all of the cities in these cities, urban studies, and it sheds light on the lived experiences of women in areas with significant material and symbolic deprivation. And the last one is that this research show how these communities use social strategies like contribution with their neighborhoods or their families to share these childcare responsibilities or helping with groceries to create infrastructure and care practices despite systematic neglect. However, I would like to ask you that except the gender, do you have considered other social economic concepts like their age or disability or their ethnics? We don't know exactly how they are manage these socio-economic aspects and have an intersection with these care mobility challenges. And another one is that in this research, you heavily focus on local or self-built infrastructure. But you have considered the connection between these community with a larger, for example, transportation network or urban zoning policies that can contribute to exaggerate their challenges or not. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Actually, we have 2 minutes, so let's say if you want to have some brief inputs into what Mariam said.
Yeah, of course. And first of all, thank you, Mariam. You've been a great supporter throughout this process. And for your first question, yes, actually, my first research question was about teenage pregnancy, since it is a huge problem here in Peru. And however, because of the lack of literature regarding this topic, especially because between the intersection of gender, mobility, and socioeconomic status, my advisor advised me to focus on the main topic. To focus on a age group that could allow me to see the main characteristics of mobility of care. That's why my research question is shaped that way. But it is an interest approach. I would follow my investigation. I want to follow my investigation with those lines, because we need to expand the discussion on mobility of care, especially talking it or seeing it through a special dimension. And second of all, about the urban planning and policies. Yeah, here in Peru, so things are more in favor of transport, as I said very at the beginning. So there are structural disadvantages and inequalities in regards to the policies that we have, especially because the political context here in Peru is very problematic, as we could say. We're facing a lot of problems with corruption and a president that is everything but a president. And so right as of now, and we are also facing some problems with extortion. So the context is very heavy here. So this is exacerbated by the lack of urban planning and policies that are focused or directed to the most vulnerable social groups, because they are known. As of now, I think there is a mobility urban plan in progress, but it is not finished yet, but it is the first one in the whole country. So yeah, there's a long journey ahead. So we need studies like this that could highlight the necessity of this approach. So yeah, thank you for your
Great.
questions.
Thank you,
Celeste.
Celeste, and
Thank you, Maria.
right on time. Nisha, you wanna introduce our next presenter?
I think both the discussions have opened up such interesting aspects of how, when we give a face to who walks, it deepens our understanding of the vulnerabilities related to walking. So, and on that note, I would invite our next presenter, Nena Jennifer, and following her presentation, Dr. Yuting Zhang. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right, so please excuse me. I would request you all to give a brief introduction of yourselves. Thank you.
Nana, or to you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
If,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Good day, everyone. My name is Nena Jennifer from Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Nigeria, Department of Logistics and Transport Technology. So I'm here to share the presentation on effective mobility on pregnant women with disability in Eastern Nigeria. So women with disability, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just let me know when you want me to change slide, okay?
Oh, okay. Women with disability using public transportation system is identified as one big, huge problem that we have here in eastern part of Nigeria due to inadequate infrastructure provided for them to fit into the space, lack of access to healthcare center, and discrimination from health providers. No provision for exclusive mobility aids guides that will help them to be able to communicate freely with the health providers and others too, and also the bus drivers and the taxi drivers. Please, next slide. So the eastern region of Nigeria is made up of Abia, Anambra, Cross River, Bayelsa, River State, and some part of Edo and Nigeria. The eastern that was the southeast, but now is now eastern region of Nigeria, which is made up of only 5 states, which are Anambra, Imo, Imo, Abia, Enugu, and Ebonyi State. So this is where my research is going to. That's the eastern part of Nigeria. Next slide, please. Disabled persons in eastern part of Nigeria, especially the pregnant one, faces a lot of discrimination and exclusion. There is no special infrastructure available for the pregnant women with disability. This is the evidence in the area of access and mobility, both in rural area and in urban area. So now we try to, the next slide, please. These are the problems which are facing the pregnant women, and this is the area people have done research on. So this paper is an attempt to bridge that gap by providing policy recommendation that will accommodate the mobility of pregnant women with disability for a sustainable future for urban transportation in eastern part of Nigeria. Next slide, please. The aim and objective of the study of this paper is to ascertain the effect of mobility on pregnant women with disability in eastern part of Nigeria. This objective was highlighted. They highlight the need to provide good boarding environment for disabled pregnant women, to provide policy guideline, to simulate government of different states in eastern Nigeria, to provide a special motorist transport infrastructure for disabled persons, to create awareness for government and related agencies to provide special aid for effective communication to link disabled pregnant women to redesigned services unit in case of emergency. Next slide, please. this research question was obtained. Is there an urgent need for government to provide good boarding environment for disabled pregnant women? What are the policy guiding that would stimulate government effort to provide motorist transport infrastructure for disabled persons in the state of Eastern Nigeria? What level of awareness could the outcome of this paper create to enable government and related agencies provide the need and aid for effective communication to link disabled pregnant women to redesign services unit in case of emergencies? Next slide, please. So this literature was reviewed, some people that have done works on this area, that have done so many research on disabled people, but not in the eastern state of Nigeria. That's why we focused on it. Then the methodology that we use, please. Yeah, the methodology, this paper, we're going to use exploratory research method, which quantify or is a mixed method that has this approach of what, how, and why question to define the solution and outcome, which involves the approach used to investigate the research problem that is not clearly defined. To this end, the study is set to simplify to interview 20 people of disabled pregnant people. We are going to interview 20 people in each of the states in Abia, Anambra, Imo, Ebonyi, and Enugu states. So this we got a bar chart that represented in mixed antenatal. Oh, the next slide, please. The expected result in mixed antenatal, you find out that 70% of people mix antenatal due to inadequate infrastructure and access to go to, and special motorists to go to antenatal. Then high transportation costs. Disabled people, they don't really have good jobs. Most of them don't really have good jobs here in Eastern Nigeria. So they don't have that capacity to be able to pay transport fare to travel from one place to another. So they need government intervention, to be able to support them either with low cost of transportation and provide adequate infrastructure for them. Then you watch the independence. They depend on people, independent on others. Most of the disabled people due to their inability to move from one place to another. Then poor road condition. Most of the roads here in Eastern Nigeria, you find out there are potholes. So the one using wheelchair and have a toddler and is pregnant, how can the person move? So government needs to help to, and there's no special road for them like pedestrian walk for them to move freely. Emergency care delay. You find out that their care delay is also there. So government needs intervention to help them in such, The result further identify various mobility challenges, including, next slide, please, including difficulty facing by pregnant women with disability in transportation, access, and movement within the healthcare center, and also facilities for them to move. As you can see inside the bus, the woman can be able to enter freely inside the bus, but here in Nigeria, it's very difficult because here in Eastern Nigeria, it's very difficult because we don't have this kind of special buses for pregnant disabled people. Next slide, please. These are the expected results. Issue related to inadequate infrastructure, poor road condition, and lack of disability-friendly transport. Impact on health and well-being. Mobility challenges can affect prenatal care, access to emergency services. Then also psychological stress. Some of them move to bus stop, and we don't have bus stop per se, like a shade that will shade them. Imagine somebody driving, going with a wheelchair, and it's still raining. How can the person be able to secure himself for the rain to stop? He cannot run, he cannot do anything. So government needs to do work to create at least a bus stop that have a shade that they can be able to stay for a while before the bus can carry them, and also sensitize the driver, because the driver cannot be able to wait for the disabled person using a wheelchair or crutches to enter before it will have time delay in it. So They have a lot of work to do. Current assessment of current boarding facilities, the evaluation of existing boarding environment for pregnant women with disability, hospital accommodation, and maternity homes. Next slide, please. Then identification of the gap in assessment and exclusive. Assessment of existing infrastructure and policy, evaluation of government policy on accessibility and disabled rights in matrimonial health care. Analysis of availability and adequacy of special infrastructure like wheelchair, hospital-friendly, accessible transport system, and identification of policy gap in different states in Eastern Nigeria. Please, next slide. Development of policy guideline, accommodation for construction of disabled-friendly matrimonial healthcare center, and also pedestrian walk, so that they can be able to access, to go out of their various places without somebody aiding them, like a blind person moving on the road. He needs a stick, a sensor stick, that whenever he sees danger, the sensor stick can be able to maybe make a sound for him to know that he's moving out of his track road. So next slide, please. Improvement on transport systems such as subsidizing, training program for health workers on the special needs for pregnant women with disability. Ways to advocate for disabled exclusive policy at the state level. Method to collaborate with NGO. Government should collaborate with NGO, community leaders, and international organizations to push for infrastructure change. Strategy to ensure policy implementation and monitoring across the state in Eastern Nigeria. It will help at least to make the disabled people to know that they're being recognized in the state. The research conclusion and recommendation. It leads us to the conclusion and recommendation. This research on the effect of mobility on pregnant women with disability on Eastern Nigeria highlights a significant change in assessing matrimonial health care due to inadequate transport infrastructure, communication barriers. The study reviews the limited availability of disabled-friendly transport, poor infrastructure, and high cost of restricted mobility, leading to delay in antenatal care and emergency. So additionally, the effect of communication between health provider and pregnant women with disability further worsened due to no access, essential health care, and lack of sign languages. They can also bring gadgets that will help the disabled pregnant women to be able to communicate with the health providers. Next slide, please. Therefore, the paper, next slide, please. Therefore, this paper gives the following recommendation for special transport service, which could positively affect disabled pregnant women in Eastern Nigeria. Introduction of disabled-friendly transport options, such as subsidizing wheelchair assistance, both bus and ambulance. Government should be able to create a bus or ambulance, a special one for disabled pregnant women that can carry them from one point. Even to access the market is a problem for them. Development of state-sponsored transport program to facilitate mobility for pregnant women with disability. Partnership with private transport provider to implement specialized ride or service for maternity health care. Then in maternal health care. Then improved boarding environment. Design accessible and inclusive maternity ward with aviators and wheelchair, accessible restroom. Thank you. Policy recommendation for better transport option and financial support for pregnant women with disability. So all these are the things that government needs to put in place to help the disabled pregnant women, to help the pregnant women with even effective communication aid, development of sign language and interpreters in maternal health centers, then provision of gadgets and so on. Thank you. Collaborate with NGOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. You were bang on time. I will now invite the discussant, Dr. Yuten. Would also like to know the right way to talk, say your name.
Thank you very much. Hi all, a brief introduction from me. I'm Yu Ting, and I'm a postdoctoral research fellow in sustainable mobility at the Institute of Transport and Logistics Studies at University of Sydney, Australia. My current research interests are active travel, micromobility, such as e-scooters, and the sharing economy. So thank you very much for your presentation, Nina, and thank you for the opportunity for me to be the discussant for your research. It is a very important topic that you choose, and I can see the paper provided a very useful list of recommendations to tackle the problem. I do have some suggestions to improve the study. First of all, the current research aim is to ascertain the effect of mobility on pregnant women with disability. We may need to, yes, I think maybe the aim need to rephrase a bit, because when you say the effect on mobility, it is a bit vague. And by looking at it, I would think, well, positive and negative effect on mobility, or is that the health effect or medical effect that mobility choices can provide to your targeted population. So I think it's not very clear. I would rephrase it to be more concrete or targeted, because based on your paper and your presentation, it seems that your research actually focused on the shortcomings of the system and infrastructure and how to improve. I'm just giving an example. Maybe the aim could be to understand the mobility challenges faced by pregnant women with disabilities. That'll be more clear. That's my, And another suggestion is about the research question 3, that you want to identify what level of awareness would the outcomes of this paper create. I think by looking at the question, to achieve that research question, you need first your recommendations become reality. And the second, you need to do an evaluation of the actual outcomes of these policies if they come true. But as I read your paper, I think what you really want to ask in question 3 might be, what would be the recommendations to enable governments and agencies provide the needed aids? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, because now in Sydney, time is after midnight. I hope my brain is still working. So generally speaking, I think a proper framing of the research aim and questions are very important and will be very beneficial for developing the paper too, because I can see it, the paper is still now a work in progress. And there are expected results, and maybe these are the expected conclusion and recommendations, right? So the next suggestion is about the literature review. I like how you cited the existing studies on Nigeria that is really relevant to your research, which provides a very good context of your study. I'm wondering whether it would be possible to look at literature studies that also from other developing countries that is relevant to your topic, and see whether they face similar problem and what are their solutions are. Maybe there are some solutions that can be borrowed into your study area. And I think, yes, a very important purpose of the literature is to fit your study in the existing research body. And that does not necessarily mean it has to be a domestic literature body. The international context are equally important. Even I'm thinking some experience from developed countries may be useful too, because they may be at their stage 2 in their history, etc. And that's that. How am I doing in terms of time? I think I'm good. Okay, so the methodology part, I think needs to say clearly whether it is survey or interview or focus group that you will be contacted, in the 100 sampled population. I think the 100 sample size is a good size for a research. But I think it would be great to know the total number of disabled pregnant women in the area of your research, so we can actually know the sample size in comparison to the representing population. That will increase your the significance of your research. That's very important to say in your research, the total number of the targeted population. And next, which I think might be the most important point, is that the results are not completed now. I understand it's a work in progress, and I will be very interested to see the full results parts when it's ready. And I think when you have the full results part, it will also generate changes to your current conclusions and recommendations to get more links between your results and your recommendations. Now, because I know it's a work in progress paper, it looks like, as I can see the draft of paper, it looks like a bit like a report. As you progress, I would recommend to not include too many bullet points, just to rephrase it as more as a research paper format, and try to think about how these recommendations, they are coming out of your study, or any part that just come out of thinking. I think that's very important. And I think the last point I have here is that it will be very helpful to have a definition in the paper on the term, the boarding environment, because I know you have talked about information services or communications between the different departments. So these can be the components of the definition, which can be very useful for people to understand the content of this topic. And I think that's all I pretty much have. Thank you very much. I hope,
Thank you, Jean, and thank you so much for joining at such late hour. Your brain is perfectly working, if I may say so, for the time of the day. And thank you, Nena, for such an insightful presentation. I'm really curious of the outcomes that you're going to have and the insights of this very innovative work that you're coming. So this brings us to our plenary time. We haven't got many questions in the chat or thoughts or comments, but I would start opening the floor to anyone that has any pending clarification, comments for the presenters. If anyone from the NextGen community that wants to have some comments on our presenters or pending questions, please unmute yourself and come, because we have a good 39 people. So I might not be able to see your hand raised. So just unmute yourself and please share your question, comment, or thoughts about these three very insightful conversations. Having in mind our topic of the day is the intersection between vulnerabilities, spatial conflicts, and active mobility. Okay, people are shy at the moment.
Obed, I see a hand.
You're muted, Obed.
You can hear me now?
Now it's good, yes.
Okay, perhaps I can start off. I know people are still really engaging with a very powerful presentation. To say less, Madina, your work was interesting, and when I was seeing the photos, I was like living in the area. And it brought about quite interesting, perspective of workability and accessibility, because first of all, it is geographic specific. Sometimes we have same issues elsewhere. Because of geography, you will have different perspectives. So I was wondering, especially your discussant also mentioned something about looking at it away from the local condition. So I was asking, is this like a general issue the whole country? And if it is, are there any steps the government has taken in terms of, especially in terms of specifications and technicals? I'm just wondering. This is back to you.
Can I answer now?
Yeah, you can.
Great. And first of all, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, I mean, talking about Lima specifically, we have a lot of areas where steep slope areas distributed in the city. And some academics say that we could talk about it's like a very a construct a a huge contrast regarding special conditions. However, there's other academics that say that maybe we could talk about a fragmented model of the city, because even though we are talking about peripheral areas, because there is like some centralized urban services, and the peripheral areas are more of the steep slope area zones, right? Actually, they're like scattered through the city, but mostly they are, well, in the peripheral zones of Lima. So yeah, even though in Caraballo it is worsened because it is the most distant district of the northern periphery, so the infrastructure available is more than lacking. There are another districts that also face these material constraints. And it is not exclusively a case from Lima in terms of Peru, because there are another places that also face these challenges. However, I'm from Caraballo, so I've faced these challenges. I also live not in a area similar to this, but it is kind of close to my home. That's why I wanted to highlight these challenges, right? So I emphasize, I have a very close link to this. And regarding your last question, sorry for taking so long, the policies available are not as much. All the steps that have been taken by public policies have worsened the conditions instead of enhancing them. Because there's a huge debate regarding if we should allow, or what are the conditions in which we are allowing this urbanization in steep slope areas. But at the end of the day, it only reinforces vulnerability in terms of special conditions, right? So thank you again. I hope I made sense.
I was following. Thank you very much, Adina. I think we can still catch up in the chat. Thank you very much for your response.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Celeste and Obed. Yuting, I see you have your hand raised, so please come with your comment question.
Yes, thank you. I do have one comment regarding the first presenter, or a question, if you're happy to respond. The first presenter, Amina, research about Malta. So my comment is that in the presentation, you mentioned you researched the personal characteristics of the participants of your study. And I'm wondering, would be worth to connect more with your demographic background. For example, the city they come from, and to the quote or the sentence they say, or their feelings about their mobility choice in Malta. I will just give an example. For example, the study told us that in the very dense populated urban centers, if people grew up in that environment, they would think walking is often the most practical way to get around. And when they move to another country, they tend to think that walking might be the best or the first option they would think about. So I was just thinking, I know you have already collected your data. Maybe you have information of the, for example, the country or city they come from, and you can have elements like the density or urban form or house culture, like, for example, and connect these factors to what they actually feel about Malta's environment. And I think there will be something very interesting there. And there's also possibility, for example, to generate different categories of people. And I think there must be a link here. So yeah, that's my comment. Hope that makes sense.
It did. Thank you, Yuting. Amina, you wanna come quickly on what Yuting commented? Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Do you wanna have a comment on what Yuting say, a response, or are you just taking notes and?
Pardon, I cannot see the recent chat.
No, Yuting was commenting on the selection of the social demographic conditions of your participants, and perhaps grouping them to kind of have more reference of their previous background to analyze your codes.
Yes. So I comment upon this.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to, we can also continue with the plenary.
Okay. So when it comes to the fact that I need to see migrants and categorize them first generation and second generation migrants, I think it's really important to see. And sorry, is this what you told me? I mean, to comment upon the feedback I received.
Sorry, my comment is about whether you are interested in connecting the research participants' demographic features with their opinions on the mobility choice in Malta. Like, for example, the city that they grew up, what is the urban form or density of that city and how it affects their opinions on their current mobility choice. Just a thought. Maybe you have the data.
Yes, indeed. This is really interesting. For instance, according to the density and how the infrastructure of Malta is shaped, their opinion is developed, right?
Yes. There are a lot of literature in the existing study that's reflecting how a personal experience can affect their current mobility choice, and think it worth looking into.
Yes, thank you. It's really
You're
interesting,
welcome.
and I will look at it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Yuting. While more of our participants come, I think I also have a couple of questions on our presenters, for our presenters. Particularly, well, Celeste, I really enjoyed your presentation. I wonder, because I'm from Colombia. I work in the UK, but I'm from Colombia. So I'm familiar with some nature of the self-built neighborhoods in our continent. But I was wondering if when you were developing the research, there was some difference within the carers that were in the neighborhood in terms of different capacities to access the water, the ones that are closer or farther from water, or the ones that are connected or not to the diverse urban services, and how these shaped their experience of walking within the segregation of space that we have in the neighborhoods. And then I'm gonna just have them also that then you can come and respond. And I invite Nisha if you also have any comments on the presenters. But I also wanted to know, I'm curious, Amina, why you're focusing specifically on commuter mobility. Since we heard from Celeste and also from Jennifer, like there's other forms of mobility that we might oversee usually or overlooked, even more when we're talking about active mobility, so we're talking about walking. So I was just curious, Amina, in terms of why the focus on commuter, and if this is related to the definition of sustainable transport that you have developed for your research. So I'll just leave these two questions. Nisha, if you want to come, or anyone from the audience, and then we leave a bit of time for the presenters to respond.
Celesta, if you wish to respond, I can go after you.
Yeah, I can respond or answer. First of all, thank you so much for your insightful question, Maria. And yeah, as our Latin American shared experience and self-built communities, or well, in general, self-built neighborhoods is a current topic that is very discussed in Latin American academia. Regarding your question, yes, so the community that I worked with didn't have neither access to a transport infrastructure, so it was a last mile location, and also they didn't have access to, they didn't have access to services such as water, electricity, and others. I worked with this community because, well, first of all, I have this relation with the district, and they live some, well, they were kind of close to my home, and I knew about this concentration of self-built housing around my area. But about the distribution of or access to services, yeah, so this community didn't have this access because it was fairly recent located over in the zone, in the area. However, there were some families associations or groups that also lived around that area and did have the access. So when fetching water, which is a common practice within the community, they had to walk around 15 to 20 minutes just to fetch water, right? They also have some informal connections to water from these communities that did have access to their homes. But this also worsened the walkability conditions, because as you walk through the community, you can see those connections, right? And at the end they obstaculize where you can walk, and because the paths are really small. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, the distribution of services is it varies, at least in the zone. However, in most peripheral communities or neighborhoods, it is a common problem.
Thank you, Celesta. So as a fellow researcher on walking, this has been like a very interesting discussion and conversation that we could witness. And in a way, it sort of brings forth the double marginality that walking suffers in many of our contexts. So one where walking itself is marginalized within the larger policy planning framework, and the other where marginal walkers and they are walking, the kind of lived experiences that have been brought forth through this presentation. So here I going back to the comment that I made earlier, where by identifying who walks and under what conditions, we are centering these lived realities in this larger discussion of structural inequality and spatial conflict. However, when we talk about advocating for meaningful interventions, and Nena's paper was trying to do that. I want to, in fact, this question, this comment sort of transitions to a question for Nena, where what I want to understand is to advocate or to suggest certain policy measures and to suggest certain solutions that you are trying to do. What becomes like a inclusive framework to do that? So any responses to that, Nena?
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for asking me this question. Yeah, we're trying to look for solution for government to be able to help the disability pregnant women, at least to have access and maybe a special mobility for them to be able to move out freely, not to be discriminated or maybe not feel completed within themselves. Because sometimes when they get to bus stop, they cannot be able to enter inside the taxi because of maybe they are on wheelchair. The taxi driver cannot come out and help them, assist them into the bus. They need a special vehicle that can take. So we're trying to advocate or trying to look for solution also, and also create a policy that government can recommend the policy for government to help them build up such things for them. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you,
Thank
Nena.
you,
I
Nena.
see.
I would like please to reply for the question when it comes to the choice with regard to commuters.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Amina. And then we have Mariam and just Mariam after Amina responds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Why I chose migrant commuters? Okay, so when it comes to, I would start with migrant and then link it to sustainability, just to have like the whole view,
Amina,
because
sorry to interrupt you, but I think just to make clear, my question was specifically commuting mobilities, because we have care mobilities, we have leisure mobilities, right? There's other destinations besides commuting. So I was just curious of why you're focusing on commuting rather than, I understood the migrants, you presented that very clearly, but I wanted to know the commuting specifically. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
Thank you for being precise. Then commuting, because it is daily, it causes daily traffic in a specific rush hours. So it is something, let's say, that is really, I mean, when you look at the rush hours, you'll find the traffic covering the whole city landscape, for instance. And mainly these people are either going to study or going from and here within this research I limited the scope to people working due to the age I chose, because it's from 25 to 44 years old. And indeed I chose this age because according to the Maltese travel survey, most of the people who are commuters are aged between 25 and 44. And then when I looked at the migrants here in Malta, the majority of, let's say, they are between 25 and 45 years old, most of the age range in Malta. I mean, the migrants who come to Malta. So I said most of migrants are commuters. And this is how I linked commuting and to age range and as well to migrants. I hope I am clear. Please tell me.
Very much so. Thank you, Amina. Mariam, if you wanna come.
Yes, I have a quick question from Celeste. I want to know that because you said that they should walk around 15 to 20 minutes to reach, for example, facilities. I want to know that it's possible they replace these walking with pro-transit options, like I think tuk-tuk. Yes, that's spelled quick, good. And I have another question that it's this neighborhood, it's like an affordable community. I want to know that do you consider that they have migrants that are living in this neighborhood or not? Because I suppose that if they are living here, they might consider other additional barriers like language barriers or other things they faced with these challenges.
Sorry, can you repeat the last question? I didn't get it. I had a problem with my internet.
Oh, yeah, sure. Since this neighborhood, it's like an affordable place to live, I want to know that there is any migrants living here or not.
Yeah, thank you so much for your questions. Can I quickly share something, please? Can I quickly share my screen? Just for a couple of
Sure.
seconds.
We have 10 minutes left, so be as quick as you can so that we can
Yeah,
have the
thank
last
you.
messages. But please do share.
Sorry. Okay, so I couldn't share all of my cartographies because it would be a huge presentation. But taking this last question, I also couldn't use this cartography in my thesis. But talking about the paratransit aspect of things, so they mainly use stairs as the paths are so narrow that they are only available to pedestrians. The that was all I wanted to share because there has been a lot of discussions within the community, this specific community, to try to expand their paths so tuk-tuks, mototaxis could enter the zone. However, it is very unlikely since the steep slope conditions of the area are huge obstacles to this. And this is also something very present throughout the city. We have a lot of cases in which there has been different options in which people have tried to gain access through transport because walking through these zones is very difficult, especially talking from a bodily perspective. So the average of time they spend walking only to get to the point to a mototaxi or another intermodal option is around 20 minutes. So let's think about what happens when you have an emergency and you have to, I don't know, go to the next or nearest hospital. The nearest hospital from this area is 30 minutes away, and you can go walking because it is in another district. And this is also a thing that is replicated in another parts, not only in Lima, but in the country. That is for your first question. And for the second, yeah, actually, the real name, I can't share the real name of my community, even though this is an international forum and maybe you won't visit it, but for anonymity reasons, the name of the community reflects that a huge part of the population is from different parts of Peru. There has been an immigrant wave of visitors here in Peru, however, from other countries. However, they don't live in these areas, but this is in the specific case of this community. For other peripheral areas, this is the case, no? That migrants from other countries do live in peripheral areas because they are more affordable. But I wanted to emphasize something, that even though the area where they live, they are more affordable in terms of buying this soil. The construction materials and the construction process is actually more expensive because the transportation money that is needed to take the materials from more flat areas to steep slope areas. And also the workers that need to be paid to do it. So that's why most of the housing there is self-built. And that's it. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Celeste, and all of the other participants. I think if there's not any other pressing questions on these intersecting issues of infrastructure, planning, and policy of governance, and how this affects people walking in different areas of the city with different social identities, we can start coming to a wrap up. Nisha, if you have also any further comments.
So I was also curious if Jane and David had some comments to share before we plan to wrap this up.
Go on, Jane.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jane.
You're muted in case you're speaking.
Oh, I apologize. I had something in the background that I had to await. I think these presentations have been really interesting. And in different ways, they represent new material to the program. And I also like the ways in which you all, in some different ways, connect with the very important issue of spatiality and how spatiality is experienced very differently by different groups. And it's a really important dimension we have to consider. And so I've been very impressed with the approaches here. So I just appreciate them. Thanks very much. I've been learning and taking notes all day.
Thank you.
David, I see you nodding you want to come. Okay.
Can I say something?
Please.
Thank you, everyone. For instance, I came to think of accessibility that Celeste talked about and that you all touched upon, which is an interesting concept. And when you think you know what it is, something more is added to the concept, and then it becomes even more intriguing. So, really nice to hear about that. When you have an accessibility lens on things, it's interesting to follow research contributing to that.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
The dimensions of accessibility and affordability and spatiality, even when you're thinking about only walking, it becomes even trickier in terms of time and how you define it and the governance of aspect of it, right? What Celeste was saying, and to go to a different hospital, even though they have a 30-minute hospital nearby. I think with this, we come to an end to this very, very fruitful session. I back Jane on what she was saying. I'm very impressed with all of we were very impressed with the applicants and more with Nisha. We had a trouble, and the team of the NextGen had troubles deciding because everyone was so it's so impressive the amount of research that is going on. Nisha, you want to come?
So I think, like Maria said, there were such wonderful applications that came in, and just like today, the kind of rich and insightful conversation that we've had around walking, mobility, spatiality, vulnerability. So I'm really looking forward to more such engaging forums in the future. And going by the applications that we have had and what we are planning to line up for the rest of the year, it is quite promising. So I think on that note, we can close the discussion here today. And over to Pascaline. Yeah, Jane.
Oh, sorry, let Pascaline go first.
Nothing much from my end. I listened and I enjoyed the conversations, and I'm sure the discussants and the presenters have done their job, and they're going to take in the feedback that came from the team. I think one of the things that is coming from the chat is if we are going to share the presentations. Karin, I'll ask you to respond to this.
Yes, I will share a recording from this event today, and also the presentations if all the presenters are fine with that. So I will reach out to you about that, but I assume that I will share also the presentations. We usually can do that.
Okay. Thank you for your support as always. And mine is also just a big thank you to our two super moderators, facilitators for the forum. And we look forward to another upcoming forum that is yet to be announced. So please make sure that you join the LinkedIn page, join our other social media platform, that is the WhatsApp, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, and have a good evening from here in Nairobi.
Jane wants to say something before we.
Sorry, I can't seem to find my raise my hand button that I usually use. Two quick comments. Thank you very much to everyone. A second comment is that this type of forum is very good, based on our experience with VREF, as a means of networking, learning about other research. And I just encourage you who've been here today to spread the word about these forums, because it's really a way for you to connect with an emergent global research community in walking. And so we hope that this will be kind of the place to go to discuss in an open, accepted environment. The other thing I'd like to mention, just in terms of news from the VREF, on Tuesday, we will be receiving applications, expressions of interest from international consortiums for building an international research program on walking. The deadline for submitting expressions of interest for establishing such research programs, the deadline is on Tuesday. So it's going to be exciting to see next steps in that. And we'll keep you posted through our various channels through Corin's good work. So thank you very much. And join Pascaline in thanking everyone, especially our excellent moderators, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for committing to this community of learning that you are part of building together with us. Thank you. And spread the word if you have friends who you think might benefit from being part of the NextGen group. Spread the word and invite them. Thank you.
Karin, have you forgotten our last photo session moment?
Yes. Everyone who have the possibility and feel like it, please come on with your face and we can say goodbye.
Great for thinking of that. Wonderful. Everyone, let us see your face. We feel like we're around the table together, right? Maybe.
Nama, I see you now. Hi, Nama.
Yeah, I see all these friends here.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. Please come on so we know you're really with us. That's great.
Yeah.
Very many familiar faces and some new ones. Always nice.
I'm going to take a picture now when everyone is smiling and happy and looking forward to next time. Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.